Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. Tyler Smith here. So today, I think I'm going to change it up a bit again. Do something fun. I'm going to cover a little bit of lore from the Lord of the Rings. Now, I know I've talked about Star Wars a little bit on this channel. And I also did a video on Harry Potter symbolism. So this will be a little bit about Lord of the Rings symbolism, symbology, a little bit of lore in there as well. Now, I haven't taken notes or anything, but I've been a fan of the Lord of the Rings for a long time now. And I like The Hobbit as well, the prequel. I don't think I have a Lord of the Rings shirt, so I wore this Hobbit shirt today. It's the closest I could do. So I have more than these two copies even, but I've got this big, nice, red, fancy hardback version of all three Lord of the Rings books in one. And of course, like many other things, the Lord of the Rings is a trilogy, so the number 3 plays an important part. The number 3 is just significant in so many different things. And then here's a paperback version of the Lord of the Rings. The Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King. All 3 in one book. And I also have the Silmarillion sitting around somewhere. That book's really hard to read. That book is mostly just lore, and it's all prequel stuff to even The Hobbit, way before that. And I've watched a little bit of the Rings of Power Middle-earth show on Amazon Prime, and it's okay. It's okay. It's not as good as the Lord of the Rings movies, in no way. Because it actually makes me want to go back and watch the movies again, even though I've already seen them so many times. I've probably seen the movies like 200 times by now, each, if I had to guess. I'm a huge fan. So I give the new series, if you haven't seen it yet, the Rings of Power series, I would say I'd give it maybe a 6 out of 10 stars. It has its moments for sure. Especially, I'm trying to think of the elven dude. It's Elrond. It's a younger Elrond. I keep forgetting that guy's actually Elrond in the new series. I keep thinking he's a different elf, but just the actor's throwing me off, because in the Lord of the Rings movies, I can't think of the guy's name, but it's the Agent Smith guy that plays in the Matrix movies makes a really good Elrond. And this guy does a good job of a younger Elrond. I think the Galadriel, the girl they picked to play Galadriel, does a really good job. I think she does really awesome. So overall, yeah, maybe a 6 out of 10 stars. And I mean, I give the Hobbit movies like a 7 or 8 out of 10 stars, and then the Lord of the Rings obviously are the best movies. I don't really like the old cartoonish ones that much. They're kind of weird, but I guess they'd be good for little kids or something, before they watch the live action Lord of the Rings with real actors. So enough of my rambling. Let's get into some of the symbology and stuff. We're not going to dig real deep into lore and history, because a lot of those details and such you can find back in like the appendix of the Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of extra historical information, and I did go through and highlight a little bit of stuff. I don't know if I'm going to read over that yet. Let me just kind of skim through some of the chapters, and we'll start thinking about let's get into the symbol of the ring anyway. So it's the Lord of the Rings. The ring is representative of Saturn. Saturn is the Lord of the Rings. Saturnian energy, is usually the limiting force. Sometimes death is sometimes symbolized by Saturn, and it's usually the villain who plays the Saturnian role. In Star Wars, we see Darth Vader, obviously. He wears black. He's the limiting force. He's the Saturnian force in that. So the dark force in this is Sauron. And he's the one that basically forged this master ring. We're going to read the intro. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. So there's 3 for the elves. You have these numbers, 3, 7, and 9. And those numbers should sound familiar to some of you. You see the combinations of like 3, 5, and 7, and 3, 7, and 9. Those are all mystical, pretty mystical numbers. So 3 for the elves, 7 for the dwarf lords, and 9 for the men, the race of men. 1 for the Dark Lord on his throne. So how many is that all together? 9 plus 7, which is 16, plus 3, 19, and then 1 for the Dark Lord, so 20 rings if I'm doing the math correctly. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie, 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. So I believe from the lore and such that basically Sauron is like a deceiver. He's kind of like a Lucifer character, and he gives out all this power, all these rings of power. And I'm not sure if he gives out all the rings, but I'm pretty sure he gives the 9 rings at least to the men of Numenor. I think it's the men of Numenor. As I said, there's so much lore and stuff. We're just going to get into like general archetypes in this video. We're not going to dig real deep into the lore because I'm not like a Lord of the Rings expert on that kind of a level. I'm really familiar with more the movies than the books, and you know, a lot of basic things about that the fans would know. But I just want to give you my perspectives on some of the topics and such. And it's always harder when I don't write notes. So yeah, Sauron's kind of almost like this Lucifer type character. And now we know that there's like a progenitor or a force that was the Dark Lord before Sauron. And this is more like primordial, you know, Morgoth. And I don't know too much about the story of Morgoth, but we'll read a little bit in the appendix. I highly recommend you look up lore on Morgoth because he's like even greater and more towersome and fearsome than Sauron by a lot. So rings, Saturn, the Lord of the Rings, which is Sauron. This whole theme of light and darkness. You know, that Scorpio, Apophis, destroyer energy, Typhon. These are all archetypes that are, you know, even if you want to get into like some of the darker, quote-unquote darker gods like Baal and some of those. Now, some of those gods were made to be more evil archetypes. They were the gods from earlier religions, and then they got turned into demons and stuff, so you have to be careful on some of that. There's countless lore out there on all the different beings and stuff. For me personally, I'm learning the most about angels. Archangels is what I know the most about in my knowledge, but I'm no expert by any means. I guess I'm an amateur scholar. I just, I tend to gather a lot of information and then just try to organize it in somewhat of a condensed form and disseminate the information again once we've broken down some of the more key components of things. That's what I try to do on this channel for the most part. So the hobbits kind of represent like the childlike spirit. It's the very pure, they're a lot more pure than the race of men who's been dealing with this darkness longer, and the elves and all these other races which have fought wars and stuff. The Shire's kind of secluded, it's kind of separated from all this war and struggle and stuff. So the hobbits they've kind of developed more of like a hippie kind of nature, more down to earth, grassroots, kind of thing. And that's what I like about the hobbits. And notice in the end, spoiler alert if you've not watched the Lord of the Rings, but it's the hobbits who end up saving Middle Earth. If it wasn't for the hobbits, Of course, there were all the other people in the Fellowship to help the hobbits battle and get through the enemies of Sauron. But ultimately, it's the courage and the heart of the hobbits, particularly like Frodo and Sam, but really all four of them, that allows there to be balance in Middle Earth. And Gandalf makes a mention. It's more the deeds, the small, kind deeds of, the everyday common people and folk that really makes this world different. And I think that's really true. And I think if we just try to be more compassionate and show more genuine care and stuff to our neighbors and the people around us, be more have more of an open home kind of feel. We have to protect ourselves from those who would seek to do harm, but for the most part, I think humanity's kind of coming together in a common understanding. There are a lot of crazy things going on, but there are a lot of good people. Most of the people are good. You have your rotten apples every now and again, but we can come together in peace, love, and tranquility.